Here's the panel that we made in the first 3 video clips. You can see there the 2 positive and negative contacts. All the cells connected there in series, bridged across here, all the way up to the other one. So that's 10 cells connected in series, roughly 0.5 volt per cell, so it should give us around about 5 volts overall. And each cell piece is 1/8 of a whole cell. Now a whole cell usually gives you about 8 amps when the sun is at full brightness shining on it. So 1/8 of the cell should give you about 1 amp. We'll never really get that in practice, we'll get a bit less than that. So we're aiming for 0.8 amps and 5 volts. Now this panel I tested and it didn't work, which is one of the joys of research. We're always doing something slightly new. Now the solar panels that you buy are soldered with a hot soldering iron using a tin-based alloy. Now this work we're doing here using self-adhesive tape with conductive adhesive is not a normal way to do it, but it's much easier obviously to teach it. Now we haven't done this very many times, and so this first panel which we've made, which doesn't work, I've had to make it again. Now I've used a slightly different technique this time. I think the problem with that panel is that the tape that I use is cheap. It is an aluminium tape with a conductive adhesive. Now aluminium isn't a brilliant conductor of electricity, it's certainly not as good as copper, and the adhesive seems to be a little bit unreliable in terms of its conductivity. So we bought a number of different types of conductive tape. This is a copper tape here, much thinner. Same sort of principle. Now the problem appears to be with that panel that I made, the connections between the individual panels. So if you remember, we put the tab on each cell separately and then made a joint in the middle. Now these joints appear to be a significant weak point that introduces a resistance into the whole thing and actually fails on some occasions. So what we've come up with as an alternative is to avoid having any joints whatsoever. So if I show you how we tab this up now, the new approach. So you'll remember that we have to tab from the positive contact on one cell, which is the back side of the cell, to the negative contact on the next cell, which is the front side of the cell. Now to do that with one strip, if we just cut one strip that is the length of 2 cells across. Now to make it be sticky on one side for one cell and sticky on the other side for the other cell, I'm cutting 2 small pieces out of the tape. Now you need to measure this up for your own particular panel design. So I'm trying to get that so you can see it on the camera. Okay, so we're cutting out this quite distinct shape. I'll just put this on a piece of paper so you can see it. So it's a distinct shape there, 2 tabs. Now what I'm doing with this is removing, my favourite job, removing the protective backing. Should not cut my fingernails. Okay, so it's removing the backing there. See that there? Okay, now what I'm going to do is that wide part in the middle, I'm going to fold that in on itself so that the adhesive doubles over. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing there. So that's folding over like that. So we then end up with what looks like a single strip. But what's important about this is that this end has the sticky on the upper surface and this end has the sticky on the lower surface. So we can then join 2 cells together without having any junctions other than the junction between the tab and the cell itself. And that seems to it seems to resolve the problem. So very carefully placing that over the cell, along the white strip, the bus bar strip, and then the other cell, turn the whole thing over. So this is now sticky on the other side. Make sure that it lines up with the bus bar, that's the important thing. There we go. And just straighten it up. Be careful when you straighten it because you can crack the cells quite easily. But luckily this tape's fairly thin. And then we rub it over with a fingernail just to make sure it's adhered properly to both bits of the cell. Okay, so that's basically the way that I've chosen to do the successful panel, which you'll see in the next video clip. So again, going from the underside of one cell to the top side of the other cell, so positive to negative, but this time without the junction that's troublesome in the middle.